Welcome to this video where I will be defending and will be countering some of the claims that are being made against the Aramaic New Testament. To summarize, the New Testament exists in a Greek form and an Aramaic version in the Syriac dialect. In the early church, many want to push the Aramaic away from the time, place, and the relevancy of the apostles, and I'm going to use church tradition examples and linguistic examples to counter this. To start off, my intention of this video is not to make an Aramaic primacy or Greek primacy argument. It will not be about a quote-unquote original New Testament, but I will simply show why the Aramaic, in my opinion, should have a much higher position in academia, in Christianity and Christian studies in general, more so than what it does today. To summarize also some of the words I will be using here, there is believed to be an oral message in Aramaic that was later on written down in the Greek New Testament. There is also a early Aramaic New Testament in the Syriac dialect called the Peshitta, and that one is the one that this video will be about. I will be using biblical and early church tradition accounts to first go through the historical relevancy of the Aramaic New Testament. I will not approach this with a secular or critical historical lens, but look at what the Christian sources say on the matter. I will begin with the life of Saint Thaddeus, called Mar Adai in Aramaic, and according to church tradition, he was born a Jew in Edessa, a community that probably knew biblical Hebrew, since that would be the language that you would pray in and study the Torah in. Edessa, in what is today modern Turkey, where also primarily Syriac Aramaic was the spoken language. He traveled to the Holy Land and was baptized by John the Baptist and became one of the 12 followers, one of the 12 disciples of Jesus Christ, who was himself speaking Jewish Aramaic. After Pentecost in Acts of the Apostles, he was sent back to Edessa by St. Thomas. And there he, with the help of God, healed King Abgar, and the kingdom converted to Christianity by his missionary work. This is later on written of by Eusebius. Already here we have someone who spoke both dialects of Aramaic, both Syriac and Jewish Aramaic, and probably Hebrew also. And it doesn't seem to have been any problems communicating. For example, when he was in Jerusalem, and then when he converted this group to what the traditional church believes was the Catholic Orthodox Apostolic form of the faith. And you would need a certain level of competency in the language to be able to do that. This was in Edessa, a Syriac-speaking community. Also, St. Thomas traveled to India and established an Aramaic-speaking church there that to this day recites the Syriac Aramaic New Testament. So among the first Christians, then when it comes to writings, many Greek texts are early in the form of fragments and manuscripts, but there are also Aramaic fragments. The Diatessaron was a gospel harmony that included parts of all of the 4 canonical gospels, so Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, in Syriac Aramaic. It was done by Tatian around the year 170 AD. The original text is lost, but an Arabic translation has survived. So Syriac speakers were writing Christian texts very early on. Saint Ephraim the Syrian, by the way, before any schisms within the church, either between the Catholic or the Orthodox, or between the Greco-Slavic and the Syriac churches, this is a saint. Saint Ephraim is a saint accepted by all traditional churches. He was a Syriac speaker, and he quoted the New Testament and made commentaries about it in the 4th century. These examples to me proves that Aramaic is a very early and important language for Christians, not just its oral presence, but also its presence in writings. Now, onto the linguistic defense of this New Testament. Greek loanwords are used to argue that the Aramaic New Testament comes from Greek speakers that tried to make an Aramaic New Testament translation, and that out of a lack of words used Greek to fill in the gaps of knowledge. The example used is Mark chapter 1 verse 1. Risho Evangelion Dieshrim Shiha Beridoloho, the beginning of the Gospel of Jesus Christ, the Son of God. The word there, Evangelion, is a borrowing from the Greek Evangelion, and the Dolat in the beginning there puts it in the Aramaic, in an Aramaic grammar structure. We quickly see that this argument is not true in this example, because later on in the same chapter, in verse 15, an Aramaic equivalent of the Greek Evangelion or Gospel, that means good news, is used, namely Basvartho. To show the double standard of this, in Judaism and Protestantism, the Hebrew Bible is the authoritative version of the Law, Prophets, and Psalms, but we don't say that the Hebrew book of Esther is irrelevant just because it uses Persian loanwords like that in certain places, meaning law, which would be Torah in Hebrew. But this argument is for some reason used in the Aramaic Gospel of Mark. Another topic is transcriptions. The name Israel is in Syriac Aramaic transcribed with the Simkat or Samech letter, where the root letter meaning of the name is man or ish in Hebrew, and this would be the letters Yod Shin. So man wrestles with God. They ask, why isn't the letter Shin used? And what I would say to that is that the Syriac Aramaic Shin is always pronounced the sh sound, and the simkat or samech is always pronounced as a regular s. Whereas in Hebrew, shin and sin are two different sounds that the same letter makes, and samech is the s sound. So Hebrew has two forms of the letter, whereas Syriac only has one sound that it produces. So the transcriber would have needed to choose between being consistent with the root letter meaning of each, or being phonetically consistent, which is what they choose, because they probably knew that in Hebrew it is pronounced Yisrael, and to be phonetically consistent they would probably use the simkat because of that. An example where the transcription is actually more accurate with the Syriac script than the Greek script is the fact that both Hebrew and Syriac makes a distinction between the vowel that accompanies the aleph or olap and the ayin letter, whereas Greek cannot do that. So the Aramaic speakers, when it comes to Emmanuel, meaning God is with us, the Aramaic version becomes more accurate in the Syriac New Testament, since the word imanu, or among us, is connected to the ayin letter and not to the aleph, something that the alpha or iota or epsilon is not able to convey. And this is again not an attack on the Greek in any way. Both the Greek Septuagint and the Greek New Testament can give us very interesting insights into older vowel traditions, for example, at the same time. But the Aramaic form of the name Emmanuel or Amanail is something that becomes more accurate because of this. Finally, the translation of the Law, Prophets and Psalms into Aramaic by the Syriac community agrees with the Hebrew Masoretic text in many ways, making it one of the oldest witnesses to that version of Scriptures. And also this suggests that the writers of the Syriac Peshitta Bible knew both Hebrew and Aramaic, which should provide an extremely valuable perspective in the ancient Christian world. Again, I do not put the Aramaic against the Greek in any way. My personal opinion is, however, that both traditions should have more equal attention for New Testament studies, and that the Aramaic language is extremely underrated. Thank you for watching.